Hello, Internet. What are we doing? We are doing a quick review for a good internet friend of mine down in California, Peter. He's working on stopping shoulder collapse, getting the shoulder to stop shrugging, and the rear leg counterweight idea with the hips that I've been talking about on the channel. Um, Rather, these are the things I am telling him I think he would be well informed to work on. Um, so just an example of a player who is throwing in a way that is not necessarily how they want to be throwing, and taking this new hip theory that came to me by way of Brian Weissman and working with Sebastian, whose last name I kind of know, um, and a gentleman named Lee. But we spent a lot of time hanging out, filming for a project, and their ideas, mostly Brian's, but also the other two guys, rebuilt my understanding of the throw and made it more holistic in that I'm now thinking about the back leg more. So this is the start of a video series, if I ever actually do a series, about building a throw from the ground up with that method. So for context, Peter. This is Peter. He lives in California. I am envious of his physical location because that park looks gorgeous. So let's take a quick look at his throw. Nice lateral footwork. Turns maybe a little too much in the X step, not worried about it yet until it causes a problem. He's doing this like pendulum swing back thing. It's good that he's on his plane already. But this method is dangerous because the disc can tend to get a little too far behind you and it makes it easier to collapse your shoulder, which Peter starts to do here. Also, just look at the relative height of the shoulders. The front shoulder is higher, the rear shoulder is down. So the shoulder plane is here on a significant Anheuser line. So we've got a little bit of a mismatch with the arm and the shoulder plane, and the hips are still pretty flat. So we'll address that first when we move into flip the camera around mode. But the shoulder just stays a little too collapsed. The elbow doesn't get in front, partly because it's shrugging up, which makes it harder for it to do its job. And then here the whole arm comes around as one unit without a ton of the elbow unhinging like we would want. And again, the hips are pretty flat on follow through there. He ends up on a little bit of hyzer, had some good activity in his front leg, but it's a little bit too late. And then looking back, just watching the rear foot here. So we're going to watch the rear foot as it de-weights. It scoops up pretty much straight up in place, stays there, immediately starts going left. And then here, boop, his second shockwave goes down the leg just like it should. But that's happening with the leg behind him and moving to the left already. So we actually want the leg to move to the right. Okay, so how long did that take? 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Awesome. Okay, so Peter ends up swinging into the reach back, which is dangerous because it can get you too cut off here. You can do it. It's just right about here. You have to start driving the elbow forward so that you get the fold in, load into the chest, and then sling out. So it's not here and then go, because then you're hugging yourself, like Seabass would say. It's fire, so that the hand comes into the chest and then out. Boom. So you have to start pushing your elbow that way a lot sooner than you'd think, bam, to get the arm to swing in and out on its own. So that's the first conceptual correction-ish. The second one is how the shoulder affects that. You do not want to end up with this higher than this unless you're intending to throw a big Anheuser, like a big aggressive shape. When this comes up, now my shoulders want to pivot here, but my arm wants to go down there. That doesn't work, right? So we want the shoulder plane to be defining the swing plane. So if everything's flat, it's going to be here. I'm trying not to hit my hand on the model of the Delta Flyer because I'm a nerd. But so this is shoulders on the swing plane, right? If I tilt, everything tilts, right? So you want those to be unified. Then, tactically, I don't ever want to throw flat. Like, not even on an approach shot. Because if I miss a degree right, I get a different shape. If I miss a degree left, I get a different shape. I would much rather commit to 10 degrees of hyzer one way or anhyzer and get a more predictable arc. Just tactically, I don't dip into tactic too much, but there's your first one. So then biomechanically, we do not ever want the hips to be flat because they will spin out too much. We get a lot better containment when our hips are on hyzer because then the rear hip is going down and the front hip is going up as we brace, right? So you just get more containment if you can make the back of the car lower than the front of the car, right? This is the car. So we want the hips on hyzer, then we want to match the shoulders to the hyzer that the hips are on. That's why you end up with this like 15 to 30 degree hyzer most of the time for most shots. And then you use a secondary swing plane thing or an understable disc to get to the shape you wanted. So shoulders, hips on hyzer, shoulders on hyzer. Then we want the arm on the same hyzer. So once we shrug, then our arm is off of that hyzer. So the most important thing to get from this new hip concept is that the hips and the shoulders are on the same plane, right? My shoulder plane is up here, my hip plane is down here, but they're matched. They're parallel. Then I need to keep my shoulder on that plane. So if I just swing my arm on the shoulder plane, I need to keep my shoulder on that plane. So I can think about my shoulder like a ball and chain, right? A ball and chain. So my spine, and then the chain is here, and the ball is my shoulder socket. So I'm going to swing that down on the plane just like I'm swinging my arm, right? If I shrug my shoulder up, I've screwed up that swinging ball and chain, and it's not flat anymore. So this is the first thing that we have to learn how to do, is how to throw in a hyzer like this and keep the shoulder down on the plane. That is the most important muscle memory thing to overcome, right? Because until you stop doing that, you're never going to feel the timing correctly, and you're never going to feel the consistency of your swing plane, because it's not consistent. You're screwing everything up. So keeping that all down on the plane is the first thing. The second thing is making sure that you have a counterweight, because as soon as you're dynamically hitting at 10, which is a whole nother video, you need a counterbalance in order to stay on your hyzer. If you don't have a counterbalance and you swing hard, it's going to pop you up, which may seem like it's after the hit, but I don't think it is. It affects stuff enough. It affects your swing plane enough that it needs to not happen, and you need to be able to stay balanced here with a counterweight, explode, and hold it for an instant. So those are the first couple things to have out of the way. Now, how do we actually throw with this new hip idea? To start, we're going to focus on okay. Sorry, first we're going to focus on getting something to drink because I was about to die. Okay. So first we're going to focus on building an actual feel for an actually solid brace. This is not something that the average player actually experiences. I'm going to say average player being someone who throws under 400 feet, right? And some guys can get to 400, 450 without doing a solid brace. But once you do get it, there's a lot more effortless distance available, and it's just more fun, and it's more consistent. So I feel like the most important part of this new progression that Brian Weissman showed me, um, his stuff is called The Method, which is a throwback to his involvement in competitive Magic the Gathering, but that's a whole different thing. So to start, we're going to build some front leg containment into the system. So I'm not going to, if I'm throwing 90 degrees this way, I'm not going to point my front toe at 90. I'm going to turn it back about 30 degrees. This is a hit at 10 thing. It helps line your body up correctly. That's all we need to say about that for now. So make sure you start with that 30 degree offset in your toe. Then we're going to make this leg from the hip socket down absolutely cement, cast in stone, steel pole, cannot move. So there's not going to be any bend in the knee. There's not going to be any twist in the leg. And there's not going to be any twisting of your knee, right? You can't really do that when your knee's locked. So, I mean, don't like lock your knee like as hard as you can, but you want it pretty darn straight and as strong as you can get it. So push the ground away with your heel, lift up out of your hip socket, right? Yoga mode, engage. Stand tall and strong on this leg, and then keep that there the whole time. The easiest mistake to make in this system is to let that give a little bit, or try to shift your weight too much and get some pop out of it, or let it rotate, or let your balance go, right? We want the foot suction cupped down the whole time, the knee engaged the whole time, the hip supported and lifted the whole time. If you let that go, you will lose the essence of the drill, and you won't actually learn what it's trying to teach you. So focus on that, come back to that very often, and check it. And check it on film. Okay, so that's the most important thing. Hopefully I made that clear enough. Focus on the front leg. Now we're going to do two things at once and focus on the back leg. So we're committing to this idea that in order for this swing plane to be defined and anchored, I actually physically super need my back foot in line with my spine so that my rotation can happen quickly. If I don't get that and I leave my foot here, maybe because I was driving off it too much, that acts as a brake that slows me down and doesn't let this side of my body come in and tuck like we want it to, right? That's the quick version of that. So, given that I want this to come here, for a standstill, it's going to come physically behind me. In an actual throw, we found out pretty quickly trying to make this actually go dead east on the T-pad that it doesn't work, because your torso is going to be coming forward to like 45-ish degrees forward, so your leg needs to be 45 back there too. So it's not south, it's not east, it's southeast-ish. But it's going to feel like you're trying to get it east. It's just not going to get there because your torso is going to pull it 45 degrees more. So that's that. We screwed that one up a couple times. So now the rear leg motion. I'm strong on the front leg. I understand I want the left leg straight behind me. I'm going to stand up on the ball of this toe and weight into the heel, knee relatively close to locked. From here, I'm going to lift, so my hips are flat, right? I'm going to lift my rear hip, and my toe is going to come off the ground. And then for the first part of this progression, I'm just going to let gravity drop my hip, and I'm going to land on my foot like this. So I went from the point of my toe to up to sliding in to the pinky blade of my foot being on the ground. So the whole thing, 30 degrees offset, knee locked, lift the hip, lift the back leg, drop the back leg, and end here with your foot just barely poking out past your standing leg. So for now, there's no acceleration besides what gravity takes care of. So I'm just picking my hip up, letting gravity drop it. Pick it up, drop it. When you can balance there and keep the front leg strong, right? So here is not good because I bent my front knee, right, and it wiggled. Want to keep that stable and strong. Lift this up, drop. I'll start to feel a stretch here, and I think glute medius. Correct me if you're a PT. Once you feel that, and you can feel stable there, like that was not good because I lost my balance backwards, right? Be picky about it. Make it actually look good and feel good. So let's see if I can do a good one. That was pretty good. Ooh, balance is a little off. So try to get as calibrated as you can on that. When you feel good about that one, you can move to adding a squeeze here. So I'm going to let my hip abductors work a little bit, and then make my hip adductors work and squeeze my legs in together a little bit. So I'm sending my rear knee here. This is a cue Sebastian came up with. Like I'm trying to hit a button, boom, right there with my rear knee. So I'm actually using some muscle power to send my rear leg forward into that east position. So then adding a squeeze, you get a way snappier motion. And then the next step, which I'm already tempted to go into, is just defining that shoulder plane with your swing arm by keeping your elbow at that level on that plane, keeping the shoulder nice and relaxed. And that's really all you need to do. If you just add a little bit of swing back, a little bit of letting your shoulders go past your hips, and hold the elbow up, and you get a little whip. So we're not really worried, we're absolutely not worried about adding anything to this yet, and specifically don't. Just feel how the hip power moves the arm. It doesn't need to be structured. You don't need to care where your hit is. Just feel the arm move, and feel that you're getting the elbow to move forward, supported by the shoulders, and the hand is swinging in on its own, right? Just like our feel the load the pocket drill. Go check that video out. This flip in passively and flip out passively is what you want to feel your hand doing. Flip in, flip out. And then don't do that. So this is wrong, right? Where I'm doing it with my arm. Feel that happen with your hips. So I'm going to start the arm and then let it go, and then have the hips actually do the work, right? So it's floppy ragdoll mode at first, because this is our hips teaching our arm the timing, and our hips learning how to be the power source in the first place. So when you can do that and it feels okay, then be mindful of where is your hit. Can you move it closer to 10? Right? That's pretty important too. Next thing to add is the offhand. So the offhand is just going to go up and then straight down. It's just connecting this to that, so that that can be the stable axis, and this to that can be the rotational axis. Is that right? No. This is the rotational axis, and there's stability from here to here. So this connects plant foot to plant hip to trailing shoulder. Those become an anchor in the ground, and then this rear hip goes forward, which makes front shoulder go backwards. So your axis of, like, it's super weird to think about it, right? It ends up feeling like your axis of rotation is around your spine, but there's actually some like weird crossbody stuff going on because you're powering this to power this. Anyways, don't worry about the theory, worry about the feel, right? So it's going to feel like you're just sending this arm straight down. So the whole thing together is going to look like this. So you get an anchor and a send. And that timing was off, my hand was late. So it's this weird relationship of learning how this has to time with this. And when I think about it, because I'm talking, I can't do it right. That feels better. But I'm not using a lot of my hip now. That's my weakness, is I tend to get focused up here and get drawn away from that. So when that happens, go back to just feeling this, making sure the leg is strong, and I dipped into trying to do too much with my knee again, right? It's tricky, but come back to the beginning of the drill, lock the knee, just feel the hips, and then add the other pieces in, keeping the leg strong. That was better. So you're learning how to move your body around an actually stable brace. Most of us never get to feeling an actually stable brace, so feeling it in a standstill in a one leg can be super powerful. Loop Ghost and Seabass and Danny and all these guys tried to show us that. I feel like now I finally understand it with Brian's help. So once you learn how to organize the rest of your body around an actually stable brace, and you know what an actually stable brace feels like, then you can start learning how to brace. Before doing that, you're just going to have your knee crumple or spin out and not know that it's not correct, right? So now that you've spent a decent amount of time with this, and I haven't spent enough time with it yet, so it doesn't integrate into my run-ups very well yet. So I need to spend more time throwing on one leg. But once you have that feel, then you can start dipping into more of a weight shift, where you're putting some weight on your back foot and then shifting into your front. All right, so then we're getting back into like my drills of throwing with just that rear foot drift. And Yanni came up with the same thing. I think his sweeper drill is pretty much the same idea. So then you can progress to doing those sweeper type drills, and you can progress to doing an actual one step and keeping that motion in there, and then you can progress to doing a walk up. But all the while come back to, something that Josh said that was really good. Don't go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Go 1, 2, oh crap, I messed up 2, go back to 1, 2, okay, it feels good, back to 1 again, 2, 3, like that. That's money. Josh is 100% right about that. We don't spend enough time going backwards and checking in on the earlier steps, right? So for this drill, go back to, is my leg locked? Is it strong? Is it stable? Is my balance perfect? Then throw from there and see what gives and come back to it. But I think really the meat of this drill is in feeling that front leg be absolutely dead static, because that's where you want your brace to get to in Drew Gibson mode, right? You don't actually have to get there, and you can just throw from a stable front leg. But I feel like there's so much value in actually isolating and finding stillness in the front leg and finding the balance around that, and then the timing on top of that. It's worth the time to check it out. So go check it out. All right, see you later, internet. Thank you.